Hey guys, tonight we're going to dive headfirst into something truly chilling. Imagine, if you will, that you've been plucked from your cozy bed, your warm blankets, and your perfectly brewed cup of tea, and plopped right into the middle of a medieval European village. No central heating, no insulated walls, no double-paned windows, just mud thatch and the biting, relentless cold. You're about to experience a winter so brutal, so unforgiving, that simply getting through it will be the greatest achievement of your life. And let's be honest, most of you probably wouldn't make it. The sheer grit, the relentless struggle, the constant soul-cracking fear of not waking up, it's a reality far removed from our modern comforts. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now tell me, where are you tuning in from tonight and what time is it there? I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You feel it first in your bones, a subtle ache that creeps in with the shortening days. It's early autumn, but the sun, once a benevolent companion, now hangs low and wan in the sky, offering little warmth. A sharp, icy gust whips through the gaps in your crude dwelling, making the straw-thatched roof sigh like a weary old man. You pull your threadbare wool tunic tighter, a shiver running down your spine that has nothing to do with the external temperature and everything to do with the dread building in your gut. Winter is coming, and it promises to be a monster. Your village, a cluster of hovels nestled precariously on the edge of a vast, ancient forest, feels suddenly vulnerable. The familiar sounds of summer, children laughing, birds singing, the distant hum of bees, have faded, replaced by the rustle of dried leaves and the mournful cry of the wind. You see it in the hurried movements of your neighbors, the grim set of their jaws as they chop firewood with an almost desperate fervor, or herd their scrawny livestock closer to home. There's a palpable tension in the air, a collective holding of breath as everyone braces for the inevitable onslaught. You are acutely aware that your survival hinges on weeks, maybe even months of grueling, back-breaking labor. Every spare moment is dedicated to preparation. You spend your days alongside others' hands, raw and chafed, gathering every scrap of firewood you can find. The forest, once a source of comfort and sustenance, now seems to loom dark and foreboding, its skeletal branches reaching like grasping claws. You drag deadfall hack at fallen trunks with dull axes and collect brittle twigs, stacking them into precarious piles near your hut. Each log represents a precious unit of warmth, a tiny defiance against the encroaching cold. You know that even with every ounce of effort, it might not be enough. The stories of past winters whispered around meager fires are grim tales of frostbitten limbs, starvation, and silent, lonely deaths. You try not to dwell on them, but they cling to the edges of your thoughts like icy tendrils. Your dwelling, a single-room hut shared with your family, is little more than a box of wattle and daub its walls, a patchwork of mud and interwoven branches. You spend hours patching cracks, stuffing any visible gaps with straw or dried moss. The floor is packed earth, perpetually damp and cold. You dream of a hearth that radiates comforting heat, but your small fire pit in the center of the room offers only a fleeting illusion of warmth, its smoke clinging to the rafters before escaping through a hole in the roof, or more often filling your lungs with acrid fumes. Your eyes constantly sting, and a persistent cough has become a familiar companion. Food, even in the best of times, is a constant worry. Now, with winter looming, it becomes an obsession. You watch the communal grain store dwindling, a knot tightening in your stomach. Your family's small plot of land yielded a meager harvest, a few tough root vegetables, some scraggly cabbage. You salt what little meat you have, typically scrawny bits of pork from the one pig your family managed to raise, or perhaps a rabbit snared, after hours of patient waiting. Every morsel is carefully rationed, a stark reminder that waste is not an option. You learn to appreciate the subtle sweetness of a roasted turnip, the earthy comfort of a thin gruel made from stored oats. It's not just about hunger, it's about the gnawing fear that the food will simply run out. The days shorten dramatically, plunging the village into an oppressive gloom for much of the day. The sun rises late and sets early, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and cold gray. You rise before dawn, roused by the biting chill, and work until long after dusk, your muscles protesting every movement. There's no time for leisure, no room for complacency. Every fiber of your being is dedicated to the singular, overwhelming goal of survival. You see the same desperate determination in the eyes of your neighbors, a shared understanding of the existential threat that binds you all. Water is another challenge. The village well, a deep hole lined with rough stones, becomes a treacherous affair as ice begins to form on its surface. You have to break through the thin crust each morning, your hands numb from the cold, to draw up buckets of frigid water. Inside your hut, any stored water quickly turns to ice if not kept close to the meager fire. You learn to conserve every drop, prioritizing drinking over washing, a stark reality that quickly erodes any lingering notions of personal hygiene. The scent of wood smoke and unwashed bodies becomes the pervasive aroma of winter. As the first snowflakes begin to fall, tentative at first, then thicker, swirling in a silent dance, a new layer of anxiety settles over the village. The world outside your small, smoky hut transforms into a vast white expanse, beautiful in its desolation, but utterly terrifying in its implications. Roads become impassable, cutting off any hope of trade or assistance from other settlements. You are on your own, a tiny speck of humanity against the might of nature. Historians still debate whether the isolation of medieval villages during winter truly fostered stronger communal bonds or simply intensified internal conflicts over dwindling resources. You certainly feel the tension, the underlying current of suspicion that can turn a neighbor into a rival in the blink of an eye when survival is on the line. You start to notice the subtle changes in the animals. The usually boisterous dogs become quieter, huddling closer to humans for warmth. The village cats disappear almost entirely, seeking shelter in barns or deep within the forest. Even the field mice, usually a nuisance, become a desperate, if sometimes tragic, source of protein, if you're lucky enough to trap one. You remember a fascinating tidbit. Your grandfather once shared a peculiar method of preserving meat by burying it in peat bogs, a practice more common in northern regions, but rumored to have been attempted in your own area during particularly dire winters. You wonder if anyone would resort to such a measure this year. Your clothes are your second skin, layers of rough wool and linen, perpetually damp and smelling of smoke and earth. You sleep fully clothed, huddled together with your family, on a bed of straw, sharing body heat. The cold seeps into your bones, a constant ache that never fully dissipates. You dream of warmth of sunlight on your face, of spring flowers, but these dreams are fleeting, swallowed by the relentless reality of the cold. Sometimes a flicker of dark humor emerges. You might chuckle grimly to yourself, thinking, well, at least I won't have to worry about looking fashionable this season. It's a small, fleeting moment of lightness in an otherwise oppressive existence. The wind howls like a hungry wolf at night, rattling the crude wooden shutters and seeping through every crack. You lie awake listening to its mournful cry, wondering if the hut will hold. You hear the creaking of trees, the distant snap of a branch, under the weight of snow and ice. Each sound is amplified in the darkness, a reminder of the unforgiving world outside. Your breath misses in the frigid air and you pull your blanket higher, trying to find a position that offers even a modicum of warmth. The fire in the hearth dwindles to embers, and you know that in a few hours it will be just a pile of cold ash, leaving you to shiver until dawn. You are constantly aware of the preciousness of your body heat. Any exertion that isn't absolutely necessary is avoided. Walking becomes a slow, deliberate shuffle to conserve energy. Even talking too much feels like a drain. You learn to communicate in grunts and gestures, saving your breath for warmth and essential tasks. The concept of calories doesn't exist, but you instinctively understand that every bit of food consumed must be efficiently converted into warmth and energy to keep you alive. You also understand on a primal level that staying dry is paramount. Wet clothing, even for a short time, can be a death sentence, quickly drawing away precious heat and inviting the insidious creep of hypothermia. You meticulously brush snow from your garments or quickly dry them near the fire if they become soaked. The communal aspect of village life takes on a desperate edge. While there's a shared struggle, there are also underlying tensions. The stronger members of the community are expected to contribute more to communal tasks like breaking ice at the well or clearing paths. Yet resources are finite and the specter of starvation hovers over everyone. There are whispers, hushed conversations behind cupped hands about who has more, who is hoarding. You try to avoid such gossip, focusing on your own family's survival, But you can feel the fragile threads of community stretching thin under the immense pressure. One day, an old woman in the village known for her remedies shows you how to make a rudimentary balm for cracked skin using rendered animal fat and herbs gathered in the warmer months. It's a small comfort, but a comfort nonetheless as your hands and face are constantly chapped and raw from the wind and cold. This simple act of sharing knowledge, a small gesture of human connection, momentarily pushes back the overwhelming feeling of isolation. You realize that while individual resilience is crucial, there are still moments when collective wisdom and compassion shine through the pervasive darkness. You might crack a dark joke to yourself, well, at least my hands will be baby soft when I freeze to death. The humor is bleak, but it helps. The days continue to blur into a monotonous cycle of cold hunger and labor. The novelty of the first snow has long worn off, replaced by a grim acceptance of its relentless presence. The ground is a solid, unyielding sheet of ice and packed snow. The few remaining animals huddle miserably, their breath pluming in the frigid air. You observe how the sparrows, usually so lively now, perch motionless on bare branches, fluffed up against the cold, their tiny lives hanging by a thread. You think about the profound indifference of nature, how it continues its cycle regardless of your struggle, a humbling, almost terrifying thought. This utter powerlessness is a constant companion. You've heard stories of people becoming snowblind during prolonged periods of bright snow reflection, a terrifying prospect that would leave you utterly helpless. You learn to squint to shield your eyes with a raised hand, trying to mitigate the harsh glare. Your vision becomes attuned to the subtle shifts in light, the way the snow gleams under a weak winter sun, or how the shadows lengthen as evening approaches. It's a heightened awareness born of necessity, every sense sharpened by the constant threat. Your hearing picks up the faintest crack of ice on the distant river, the whisper of snow falling from a loaded branch. Tiny signals that might offer a clue about the changing conditions. One particular day, the wind howls with an almost supernatural fury, kicking up blinding snowdrifts that engulf your small hut. You can hear the timbers groaning, the thatch rustling violently. The fire within flickers precariously, and you instinctively huddle closer to its dwindling warmth, praying it won't go out. The blizzard rages for what feels like an eternity, trapping you inside, cut off even from the few interactions you normally have. This total isolation, the knowledge that even if you needed help, no one could reach you, is a terrifying realization. You tell yourself, just keep breathing, just keep the fire going. It's a mantra, a desperate plea to yourself to persevere. The blizzard, after what felt like an eternity, finally begins to subside. You emerge from your hut, blinking against the blinding white landscape. The world has been utterly transformed, swallowed by an impossibly deep blanket of snow. It reaches your waist in places, obliterating familiar landmarks, and making even a short walk an exhausting ordeal. Your first priority, even before seeking food, is to ensure the integrity of your shelter. The wind has torn at the thatch, leaving new gaps that invite the bitter cold inside. Your fingers, already stiff and raw, ache as you attempt to repair the damage, stuffing bundles of straw into the exposed gaps, reinforcing weak points with bits of scavenged wood. Every breath is a puff of steam, every movement a struggle against the heavy, clinging snow. Building your haven in this relentless environment isn't a single act, but a continuous battle. The wattle and daub walls, while thick, offer only so much insulation. You try to pile snow higher against the outer walls, hoping its insulating properties will offer some additional barrier against the wind. You remember hearing a story from a traveling merchant years ago about people in colder lands building homes, almost entirely of ice and snow. Yet here you are, fighting to keep a simple mud hut from succumbing to the elements. It feels absurdly primitive, yet profoundly vital. Inside, the smoke from your fire often makes your eyes water and your throat raw. You spend hours tending the small flame, carefully adding twigs and smaller logs, trying to coax maximum heat from minimum fuel. The perpetual haze in the hut makes breathing difficult, and the constant cough that plagues your family is a grim reminder of the poor ventilation. You often wonder if the smoke, in some twisted way, also serves as a protective layer, warding off unseen evils or simply making the cold air feel less sharp. It's a foolish thought, but comfort can be found in strange places. You venture out only when absolutely necessary, each trip a calculated risk. The snow muffles all sound, creating an eerie silence that is broken only by the crunch of your footsteps or the distant howl of the wind. The forest, once merely imposing, now feels actively hostile, its trees laden with snow, ready to drop heavy burdens without warning. You hunt for fallen branches, knowing that cutting down live trees would be too difficult and wasteful of precious energy. You spot animal tracks, rabbit, deer, perhaps even a wolf, but they are often swallowed by the drifting snow, leading you on fruitless, energy-draining pursuits. Hunger is a constant gnawing companion. Your stomach often cramps and your head feels light. You dream of rich stews, of fresh bread, of roasted meat, only to wake to the stark reality of thin gruel and meager portions of dried root vegetables. You learn to make every bite count, chewing slowly, savoring the meager flavors. You boil water and add whatever dried herbs you manage to gather in the warmer months, trying to extract every last bit of nutrition and flavor. The taste of plain boiled turnip becomes a delicacy. You share what little you have with your family, the act of dividing the meager portions, a silent, solemn ritual. Historians still debate the true extent of communal food sharing versus individual hoarding during severe medieval famines. It likely varied wildly by community and individual temperament. You see both instances in your own village. Some families clinging desperately to their own meager stores, others sharing what little they have in a desperate attempt to ensure collective survival. The livestock, your precious few sheep and scrawny pig, are barely surviving. They huddle in the small makeshift lean-to, attached to your hut, shivering despite the crude protection. You ration their meager fodder, mostly dried grasses and straw, knowing that if they die, a vital source of future food and wool will be lost. Their plaintive bleats and grunts are a constant reminder of your shared vulnerability. You spend time huddled with them, trying to share your own body warmth, stroking their matted wool, a silent prayer that they will endure. Sickness, as predicted, begins to take its grim toll. A persistent cough sweeps through the village, worsened by the smoke-filled huts and the constant damp. Then comes the fever, the shivering, the aches that make even lying still unbearable. You see it in your neighbors and your family, and eventually it strikes you too. Your limbs feel heavy, your head pounds, and your throat is a raw, burning agony. You try to sweat it out, piling on more blankets, but the fever simply rages, making you delirious. There's no doctor, no effective medicine, just folk remedies passed down through generations. Your grandmother, a woman whose wisdom is as old as the hills, applies poultices of warmed herbs to your chest, murmuring ancient incantations. You remember a bizarre, almost unbelievable medieval remedy involving finely ground mouse droppings, mixed with honey for certain ailments, though thankfully your family avoids such extreme measures. You just lie there helpless, utterly at the mercy of your own body's fight. The days blend into a monotonous cycle of survival. You rise with the sun, or rather with the faintest hint of gray light filtering through the smoke hole. You tend the fire, carefully breaking off chunks of ice from the water bucket, melt it, and then share the meager gruel. Then it's a constant battle against the cold and hunger, until the sun dips below the horizon once more, plunging the world back into darkness. There's no news from the outside world, no visitors, no new faces. The isolation is profound, a mental and emotional weight as heavy as the snow itself. You find yourself talking to yourself more often just to hear a voice, any voice beyond the howling wind and the crackling fire. It's a small way to maintain your sanity. The lack of light is particularly taxing. You rely on the flickering glow of your fire, supplemented by the occasional rushlight, a dried rush dipped in animal fat, which offers a feeble, smoky illumination. Reading is impossible, and even intricate needlework is a strain on your eyes. Stories become the main form of entertainment, told and retold by the firelight passed down through generations. You listen to tales of heroes and monsters, of great kings and epic battles, a momentary escape from the grim reality outside. Sometimes someone tells a joke, a simple, almost childish one, about a stubborn goat or a foolish farmer, and the laughter, thin and fleeting, is like a burst of sunlight in the oppressive gloom. It's a reminder that even in despair, human spirit finds ways to persist. Your sleep is rarely restful. The cold seeps into your bones even under layers of rough blankets, and the gnawing hunger often wakes you. You dream of food, of warmth, of a world where the sun shines bright, and the ground isn't frozen solid. Sometimes you wake up shivering uncontrollably, your teeth chattering, and it takes every ounce of willpower to force yourself out of bed and add another log to the dying fire. You learn to appreciate even the briefest moments of warmth, pressing your hands against the hot stones of the hearth. Feeling the radiant heat penetrate your skin, a fleeting comfort against the constant chill. The children in the village, usually so full of energy, are subdued and pale. They huddle indoors, their games, muted, their laughter rare. You try to keep their spirits up, telling them stories, playing simple games with pebbles or bits of straw. But you can see the fear in their eyes, the awareness that their very survival is precarious. You worry constantly about their small, fragile bodies, so much more vulnerable to the cold and hunger than your own. Every extra spoonful of gruel, every extra layer of warmth goes to them first. You would give anything to shield them from the harsh realities of this winter, but you are as much a victim of it as they are. As the weeks drag on, a strange kind of routine settles, in a rhythm dictated by the demands of survival. You rise, you feed the fire, you melt ice for water, you eat your meager meal, you perform necessary chores, you huddle for warmth. You sleep, and then you repeat it all again. Days bleed into weeks, weeks into months. The world outside remains a relentless white interspersed with periods of gray skies and bone-chilling fog. You learn to read the subtle changes in the weather. A slight shift in the wind, a heavier fall of snow. Becoming a grim meteorologist out of sheer necessity. Every small detail holds potential meaning, every nuance observed for signs of worsening conditions, or more hopefully a slight easing of the torment. The communal well, the source of water for the entire village, becomes a site of daily struggle and unspoken tension. The ice grows thicker, requiring more effort to break through. Sometimes the bucket gets stuck or the rope frays. You queue patiently, shivering, waiting your turn. The silence punctuated only by the rhythmic thud of an axe breaking ice or the scraping sound of a bucket being drawn up. You watch your neighbors trying to gauge their strength, their health, their despair. You offer help when you can and gratefully accept it when offered. These are the moments when the fragile bonds of community are tested, when a helping hand can mean the difference between life and death. You might even crack a joke grim and tired about how this daily chore is better than breaking rocks, just to try and lighten the mood, even if only for a second. One particularly cold morning, you wake to discover that the small reservoir of water you left in a wooden bucket overnight has completely frozen solid, a thick block of ice, defying your efforts to retrieve even a drop. It's a stark reminder of the extreme temperatures. You learn to keep water closer to the fire or even beneath your bed of straw, relying on the ambient heat of your own body to prevent it from freezing completely. This level of constant vigilance, this perpetual awareness of the cold's insidious reach, is utterly exhausting, a mental burden that weighs as heavily as the physical one. You start to develop an uncanny ability to sense the changes in the air, a primal instinct honed by desperation. The way the wind smells the quality of the light, the subtle shift in pressure, all become indicators of what the next hours might bring. You find yourself relying less on visible signs and more on an intuitive feeling, a gut sense of the weather's intentions. This connection to the environment born of necessity is both profound and terrifying, reminding you just how much your existence is tied to the whims of nature. The true ordeal of sustained hunger begins to set in, transforming from a mere discomfort into a constant, debilitating agony. Your body, once fueled by adequate, if not abundant meals, now feels like a hollow vessel perpetually craving sustenance. Every movement is an effort, every thought clouded by the persistent gnawing in your stomach. You feel the weight falling off you, your clothes hanging looser, your bones becoming more prominent. Your muscles ache with an unfamiliar, deep-seated weariness that no amount of rest seems to alleviate. This isn't just about feeling empty. It's about your body slowly consuming itself to survive. The daily quest for sustenance becomes a desperate, almost primal hunt. The meager stores of salted meat and dried vegetables dwindle visibly, each portion becoming smaller. Each meal a somber accounting of what little remains. You find yourself meticulously picking through the last bits of grain, ensuring no stray kernel is left behind. Every crumb, every flake holds immense value. You learn to make a thin, watery gruel stretch further by adding extra melted snow, sacrificing nutrition for volume, a psychological trick more than a physical one. You try to remember the taste of a truly satisfying meal, but the memory is fading, replaced by the bitter tang of hunger. You venture further into the snow-choked forest than you ever dared before, driven by desperation. The traps you painstakingly set for rabbits or squirrels often come up empty or worse, yield nothing more than frozen, inedible carcasses. The forest, so bountiful in warmer months, is now a silent, treacherous wilderness. You look for any sign of life. A buried root, a cluster of frozen berries, anything that might offer a morsel of energy. Your vision sharpens, your senses heightened, as you scan the bleak landscape for anything edible. You remember a whispered tale about surviving on tree bark, stripped and boiled, but the thought alone makes your stomach churn. Your family's small, scrawny pig, which you had hoped would last through the winter, finally succumbs to the cold and lack of feed. It's a devastating blow, a moment of profound despair. The decision is made to butcher it, a grim task performed with numb fingers and heavy hearts. The meat, while precious, is tough and lean. You salt it, hang it, and ration it out, knowing that this last significant source of protein will not last forever. The scent of cooking meat, rare as it is, fills your small hut. A powerful, almost overwhelming aroma that simultaneously comforts and torments, a reminder of what you have and what you are losing. The village's communal efforts to find food become increasingly desperate. Small hunting parties venture out armed with spears and nets, hoping to bring down a deer or boar. But the deep snow makes tracking nearly impossible, and the animals themselves are scarce, having either migrated or succumbed to the harsh conditions. Those who return empty-handed carry a heavy burden of collective disappointment. You hear hushed rumors of neighboring villages facing even worse fates, of people resorting to unspeakable acts for survival. It's a terrifying thought, one you quickly push from your mind, focusing on your own struggle. Scholarly debates persist on the true prevalence of cannibalism during severe medieval famines, often noting that while desperate acts occurred, they were rarely widespread. You hope with every fiber of your being that your community will never reach such a point. Water, though abundant in the form of snow, requires precious fuel to melt. You find yourself constantly weighing the need for warmth against the need for drink. The fire, your lifeblood, demands constant feeding, and every log burned means less heat for tomorrow. You learn to gather snow in buckets and place them near the dying embers of the fire, hoping the residual heat will slowly melt it overnight. The water you get is often murky, tasting of ash and melting snow, but it is liquid, and it sustains you. Dehydration, though less dramatic than starvation or freezing, is a constant, insidious threat. The concept of time begins to warp under the relentless pressure. Days bleed into each other, marked only by the rising and setting of the pale sun, the ebb and flow of hunger and cold. You lose track of specific dates, weeks, even months. The world outside your hut is a monochrome blur of white and gray. The monotony itself becomes a burden, a mental weight that presses down on your spirit. There are no holidays, no celebrations, no moments of true joy. Every waking hour is a battle, every sleep a fitful escape. You find unexpected solace in small, seemingly insignificant details. The way a single snowflake catches the faint light from your fire, shimmering for a moment before melting into dampness. The sound of a bird's faint chirp, a rare sign of life in the silent, frozen world. The warmth of your child's small hand in yours. These tiny fragments of beauty and connection are like embers in the darkness, reminding you that life, however tenuous, persists. You might even find yourself smiling faintly at a particularly absurd situation, like trying to chip off a chunk of frozen bread with a dull knife. A little dark humor goes a long way. The children, despite their constant hunger and the pervasive cold, occasionally manage to find moments of play. You watch them bundled in their ill-fitting clothes, chasing each other in the packed snow near the hut, their muffled laughter a fragile counterpoint to the howling wind. It reminds you of the resilience of the human spirit, especially in the young. You try to join them sometimes to kick a frozen snowball or simply watch their innocent joy, a brief reprieve from the grim realities of your existence. It's a reminder of what you are fighting for. Your body begins to adapt in strange ways to the constant hunger. Your metabolism slows and you feel perpetually tired. Your mind, however, seems to sharpen focused entirely on the immediate needs of survival. You become incredibly efficient with your movements conserving every calorie. You instinctively know how much effort a task requires and whether it's worth the expenditure of precious energy. This primal efficiency honed by desperation is both a burden and a strange kind of liberation from the complexities of normal life. There is only survival. One afternoon, as you venture out to collect more firewood, you discover a small, unexpected patch of frozen, withered berries clinging to a thorny bush partially covered by snow. It's not much, perhaps a handful, but it's a tiny, unexpected windfall. You carefully pluck them, your numb fingers fumbling, and bring them back to your hut. Your family devours them, their faces lighting up with a brief flicker of delight at the sudden sweetness. It's a moment of pure, unadulterated pleasure, a reminder that even in the bleakest of times, nature can offer unexpected gifts. This small triumph feels like a monumental victory, a testament to the fact that hope, however fleeting, can still be found. The desperate search for food takes you to unusual places. You might find yourself digging through old animal middens, hoping to find forgotten scraps, or perhaps even venturing into abandoned huts in the hopes that some previous occupant might have left something behind. The dignity you once held slowly erodes under the relentless pressure of hunger. You learn to swallow your pride to ask for help from neighbors when your own stores are truly depleted, to accept the meager offerings with profound gratitude. This humbling experience reveals the deepest levels of human vulnerability and interdependence. The physical toll of malnutrition is evident. Your skin is dry and flaky, your hair brittle. Your gums might bleed and your teeth feel loose. You suffer from frequent dizzy spells, especially when you stand up too quickly. Your vision sometimes blurs and your hands tremble. You are constantly cold even when huddled close to the fire, as your body simply doesn't have the fuel to generate sufficient heat. You understand on a visceral level that you are slowly starving, and the only thing keeping you alive is the tiny continuous stream of calories you manage to scrounge. You become intimately familiar with the symptoms of starvation. The insatiable cravings give way to a dull, constant ache. Your stomach shrinks and the thought of eating a large meal becomes almost nauseating. You feel weak, your movements slow and deliberate. Your thoughts become muddled, your memory less reliable. It's a slow, insidious decline, a battle fought not with weapons, but with sheer, stubborn will. You look at the others in the village, seeing the same gaunt faces, the same hollow eyes, and you know, you are all united in this silent, desperate struggle. The lack of consistent, nutritious food impacts your mental state profoundly. You find yourself more irritable, prone to snapping at minor provocations. Despair can set in quickly, a heavy blanket over your thoughts. It takes immense effort to push through these moments, to remind yourself of your family, of the coming spring, of anything that offers a flicker of hope. You cling to these threads of optimism like a drowning person to a piece of driftwood. It's a testament to the human spirit that even in such dire circumstances, the will to survive, to see another day persists. Sometimes in the darkest hours of the night, when the fire is almost out and the cold seeps into your very bones, you allow yourself to dream of a hot meal. Not a feast, not a banquet, but a simple warm filling bowl of stew, rich with meat and vegetables. The aroma fills your imagination almost tangible, and you can almost feel the warmth spreading through your empty stomach. These dreams, though ultimately unfulfilling, offer a fleeting escape, a moment of pure, uncomplicated pleasure, before you are dragged back to the harsh reality of the frigid hut and the gnawing hunger. This struggle for food, for warmth, for basic existence is the very core of your medieval winter. As the endless winter grinds on a new insidious enemy, emerges widespread sickness. The relentless cold, coupled with malnutrition and the cramped, smoky conditions within the huts, creates a breeding ground for disease. What starts as a persistent cough in one household quickly sweeps through the entire village, a grim wave of contagion that spares almost no one. You watch helpless as feverish shivers rack your neighbors as children grow weak and listless, their small bodies succumbing to ailments that in healthier times might have been mere annoyances. The community, already weakened by hunger and cold, now faces a threat that strikes from within, an invisible killer that stalks the dim, smoky air of your haven. The most common ailment is a hacking, chest-rattling cough, often accompanied by a high fever. Your own throat feels raw and inflamed, and each breath is a shallow, painful effort. The smoke from the ever-present fire, while offering a semblance of warmth, constantly irritates your lungs, making the cough even worse. You see people with eyes watering constantly, their faces flushed with fever, their bodies shivering uncontrollably even when huddled closest to the flames. Sleep offers little respite, punctuated by violent coughing fits that leave you breathless and aching. There are no trained physicians, no apothecaries with ready cures. Instead, you rely on the wisdom of the village elders, particularly the older women, who possess a vast, if sometimes superstitious knowledge of herbs and folk remedies. They concoct bitter brews from dried roots and leaves gathered in the warmer months and carefully preserved. You are given a decoction of boiled willow bark known for its pain-relieving properties, or perhaps a compress of warm marshmallow leaves for a sore throat. These remedies offer some temporary relief, a fleeting sense of comfort, but they are rarely a cure for the more severe afflictions. Academics still debate the true efficacy of many medieval herbal remedies. While some offered symptomatic relief, their ability to combat serious infections was limited. You try everything. You drink more of the smoky, melted snow water, hoping to flush the sickness from your body. You bundle yourself in every available layer of wool, trying to sweat out the fever, but the cold seems to penetrate everything. The weakness that accompanies the illness is profound, leaving you exhausted after even the simplest tasks. You find yourself spending more and more time simply lying on your straw bed, conserving what little energy you have, listening to the labored breathing of your family, the pervasive sound of coughing from neighboring huts. The sheer difficulty of basic hygiene exacerbates the problem. Water is precious, often reserved for drinking and cooking. Washing your body, let alone your clothes, is a luxury. The constant dampness combined with the lack of ventilation in the crowded huts creates an environment where germs thrive. You try to keep your hands clean, rubbing them with ash or snow, but it's a losing battle. The knowledge that the very air you breathe, the very contact with your loved ones could be spreading the disease is a terrifying realization. Children are particularly vulnerable. Their small bodies, already weakened by hunger, succumb quickly to fevers and respiratory infections. You hear the heartbreaking cries of mothers whose infants struggle for breath, their faces pale and drawn. The sorrow that permeates the village is almost as heavy as the cold itself. Funerals are simple, somber affairs, hurried rites performed in the frozen earth bodies, wrapped in shrouds, a stark reminder of life's fragility. Each passing is a blow to the already diminished communal strength, a deepening of the collective despair. You witness instances where desperation leads to truly unusual practices. There's a story whispered in hushed tones of a family who, in their terror, tried to ward off a fever by tying a live chicken to their child's chest, believing its warmth and life force would draw out the illness. It's a testament to the sheer terror and lack of understanding surrounding disease in this era. While you scoff at such superstitions in your mind, a part of you understands the desperate need for any hope, however irrational. You might even find yourself contemplating some odd old wives' tale, thinking, could it hurt? The mental toll of constant illness is immense. The physical discomfort is bad enough, but the fear of contagion, the helplessness in the face of suffering, and the knowledge that death hovers constantly nearby wears down your spirit. Sleep, when it comes, is often disturbed by nightmares of feverish dreams or the phantom sounds of coughing. You try to maintain a semblance of normalcy to offer comfort to your sick family members, but your own strength is waning. Access to food becomes even more critical when sickness strikes. A feverish body needs nourishment, but your meager stores are already critically low. You try to coax sick family members to eat, offering them small sips of warm gruel, knowing that every calorie is vital for their recovery. The irony is not lost on you. The very conditions that lead to sickness also deplete the resources needed to fight it. It's a cruel, self-perpetuating cycle of misery. You learn to recognize the subtle signs of worsening illness. The deepening of a cough, the prolonged periods of listlessness, the onset of confusion. These observations fill you with a chilling dread. You become a vigilant caregiver, monitoring breath, checking for fever, doing everything within your limited power to alleviate suffering. It is a grueling, thankless task often performed in the dim light of a smoky hut, with only the crackle of the fire for company. The village's small burial ground, usually a quiet place, becomes a grim testament to the winter's ravages. The ground is frozen solid, making burials incredibly difficult. Graves are shallow, hastily dug, and covered with mounds of rock and earth. Each new mound is a fresh wound on the heart of the community, a reminder of the precious lives lost. You attend these somber ceremonies standing, shivering in the biting wind, your grief mixing with fear for your own survival and that of your remaining family. It's a chilling visual representation of the winter's impact. One morning you wake up feeling a distinct improvement. The fever has broken, the cough is less severe, and a faint flicker of energy returns to your limbs. It's a small miracle, a profound relief. You understand viscerally that you have cheated death, that you have stared into the abyss of sickness and emerged. This newfound strength, however fragile, fills you with a quiet determination. You are a survivor, and that knowledge, however small, is a powerful motivator. The experience of illness, both your own and that of your loved ones, changes your perspective. You become less concerned with societal norms or petty grievances and more focused on the fundamental aspects of existence: warmth, food, and health. The value of a strong body, a clear mind, and even a simple breath becomes immeasurably precious. You gain a profound appreciation for basic comfort, for the ability to simply stand upright without dizziness, to breathe without pain. The lingering effects of illness, even after recovery, are noticeable. Your body feels weaker than before, and exhaustion sets in more quickly. The cough might linger for weeks, a persistent reminder of the ordeal. You are more susceptible to the cold, your immune system still recovering. This fragility means you must be even more careful, conserve even more energy, and avoid any unnecessary risks. The winter has left its mark physically and mentally, a lasting scar on your being. The village, a collection of disparate families and individuals, becomes your entire world. With the outside cut off by impassable snow and ice, the dynamics within your small community intensify, becoming a microcosm of human nature laid bare under the extreme pressures of winter. The very air you breathe is charged with a mix of shared desperation, fragile hope, and simmering tensions. Community, for all its potential for warmth and support, also harbors its own unique dangers: suspicion, resentment, and the brutal reality of dwindling resources. You spend more time indoors huddled in your own smoky hut, but the need for communal tasks, breaking ice at the well, clearing snow from paths, guarding the meager livestock, forces interaction. You observe your neighbors with a new, almost clinical eye. Who looks weaker? Who seems to have more food? Who is still strong enough to help, and who has become a burden? These are the unspoken calculations that run through every mind, a grim assessment of collective survival. Historians still debate the extent to which self-preservation superseded communal duty in medieval communities facing extreme hardship. Accounts vary widely based on specific circumstances and local leadership. You see evidence of both in your own village. There are moments of true camaraderie born from shared suffering. When a family's roof collapses under the weight of heavy snow, the entire village, despite their own struggles, rallies to help rebuild it, working with numb fingers and weary bodies. The simple act of sharing a precious, slightly cracked wooden bowl of lukewarm gruel, or lending a much-needed axe head, becomes a profound gesture of solidarity. In these moments, you feel the fragile yet powerful bonds of human connection, a flicker of warmth in the pervasive cold. A grim joke might even pass between you and a neighbor about needing extra arms for snow shoveling. If only we could sprout another set of limbs, eh? Then this snow wouldn't stand a chance. The shared laughter is thin but real. However, suspicion also begins to fester. As food supplies dwindle and illness spreads, whispers start to circulate. Who is hoarding grain? Who is secretly trapping more game from the forest? The line between necessary resourcefulness and selfish greed blurs under the extreme duress. You find yourself guarding your own family's meager provisions with a new fierceness, even as you try to maintain an outward appearance of cooperation. Trust once a given becomes a precious commodity, easily eroded by fear and hunger. Petty squabbles usually resolved with ease now escalate into heated arguments fueled by exhaustion and desperation. A dispute over a shared tool, a perceived slight, or a slightly larger portion of communal firewood can quickly erupt into shouting matches. The stress is palpable, a constant pressure cooker within the confines of the village. The village elder, a man whose wisdom was once universally respected, finds his authority challenged as people become increasingly desperate and unwilling to follow rules that seem to threaten their immediate survival. You also become acutely aware of the social hierarchy, however subtle within the village. The miller, with his control over the precious grain, wields a quiet power. The blacksmith, whose skills are vital for repairing tools, is indispensable. Those with more land or healthier livestock are eyed with a mixture of envy and silent resentment. You, with your average plot and struggling family, occupy a precarious middle ground, neither powerful nor completely destitute, navigating the complex web of relationships with extreme caution. The fear of being ostracized, of being deemed a burden, is a powerful motivator. If you or a family member falls too ill or becomes too weak to contribute, the unspoken question hangs in the air: will the community still support you, or will you be left to fend for yourselves? This terrifying possibility forces you to push past your own pain and exhaustion to demonstrate your continued value to the collective. You drag yourself out to help clear snow even when your body screams in protest, just to show you are still capable. The long hours of darkness, the endless confinement, and the pervasive anxiety take a heavy toll on mental health. You see signs of despair in the eyes of others: blank stares, sudden outbursts of weeping, or complete withdrawal. Conversation dwindles, replaced by a brooding silence. The mind, like the body, begins to starve, craving stimulation, warmth, and hope. You try to remember the stories you once knew, the songs you once sang, to keep your mind from succumbing to the crushing weight of monotony and hopelessness. Rumors, often wild and baseless, spread like wildfire through the isolated community. Tales of witches in the forest of curses, bringing the sickness of neighboring villages, suffering even worse fates, feed into the general paranoia. These superstitions, once a distant background hum, now take on a terrifying reality in the dim light of desperation. People look for scapegoats, for explanations, for anything that can make sense of the overwhelming suffering. You try to cling to logic, to what you know is true, but even your own mind feels vulnerable to the encroaching darkness of irrational fear. Despite the tensions, the daily rituals continue, a fragile framework that holds the community together. The shared trips to the well, the collective prayers in the small, unheated church, the brief exchanges of news and gossip. These small acts provide a semblance of normalcy. The sound of the church bell, even muffled by the snow, is a constant, reassuring presence, marking the passage of time and reminding you of a higher power that perhaps, just perhaps, might offer some salvation. You learn to read the subtle cues in people's faces, the tightness around the eyes that signals hunger, the tremor in the hands that betrays weakness, the fixed, distant gaze that speaks of despair. You become a master of unspoken communication, navigating the delicate social landscape of your isolated village. Knowing who to trust, who to avoid, and who to help becomes as crucial to survival as finding food or chopping wood. It is a harsh education in human nature, stripped bare of all pretense. The shared enemy of winter, for all its brutality, also creates an undeniable, if grim, bond. You are all in this together. The knowledge that everyone around you is suffering, struggling, and fighting for their lives fosters a strange kind of collective resilience. You see instances of remarkable selflessness where individuals put the needs of others before their own small acts of heroism that go unnoticed by history, but are vital to the survival of the group. A neighbor barely able to walk might still offer to watch your children while you search for firewood. These acts, however rare, are beacons of hope. One evening, as the sun sets in a spectacular display of bruised purples and oranges, painting the snow-covered landscape in fleeting colors, you witness a rare moment of collective calm. People stand outside their huts watching the spectacle in silence, a shared appreciation for the fleeting beauty. It's a moment where the internal tensions dissipate, where the shared struggle becomes a shared wonder, a brief connection to something larger than yourselves. A young boy might point up at the sky, his small voice breaking the silence with a soft, "Look!" And for a moment the adults too look and remember beauty, This constant push and pull between individual survival and communal responsibility is the very heart of your medieval winter. It's a delicate balance, constantly shifting, constantly tested. You learn that while strength is important, adaptability and the ability to navigate complex human relationships are equally vital. Your social intelligence, honed by these desperate circumstances, becomes as sharp a tool as any axe or knife, a critical asset in the brutal game of medieval survival. The winter, already a merciless adversary, throws its full fury upon you. Blizzards rage with a primal force, turning the world outside your hut into a swirling, blinding chaos of snow and ice. The wind howls like a banshee, a mournful, relentless cry that seems to penetrate the very marrow of your bones. You huddle inside, listening to the timbers of your flimsy dwelling groan and creak under the relentless assault, wondering with every gust if this will be the moment it finally gives way, burying you and your family under a mountain of snow and splintered wood. You learn to read the sky with an almost superstitious intensity. The subtle shift in cloud formations, the particular quality of light before a storm, the way the wind whips up dry snow into ominous plumes. These are the omens that dictate your every move. A darkening horizon, even in the perpetual gloom, fills you with a chilling dread, signaling another onslaught. You rush to gather every last bit of firewood, to secure every shutter, to bring in every last scrap that might be lost to the approaching tempest. It's a race against nature's most brutal display, and you are acutely aware of your insignificance in the face of its power. When a full-blown blizzard hits the world outside, ceases to exist. Visibility drops to mere feet, and stepping outside means risking immediate disorientation, frostbite, and potentially getting lost forever in the whiteout. You are trapped within the confines of your hut, the flimsy walls your only barrier against certain death. The smoke from your fire, usually a nuisance, now feels like a desperate lifeline, a fragile warmth in the overwhelming cold. You pile on more layers of clothing, sharing blankets, huddling together for warmth, trying to minimize any exposed skin. Your breath missed in the frigid air of the hut, a constant reminder of the encroaching cold. The sheer volume of snow is staggering. It piles against your door, effectively sealing you in, turning your single entrance into a formidable barrier. You might have to dig your way out, a grueling task that saps your strength and leaves you breathless. The weight of the snow on the roof is a constant worry, threatening to collapse your precious shelter. You have to periodically push it off with long poles, a precarious and exhausting chore performed in the biting wind and swirling snow. Your arms ache, your fingers are numb, but the alternative is unthinkable. The extreme cold brings with it new dangers. Frostbite becomes a constant threat. You learn to recognize the early signs: numbness, a waxy appearance to the skin, a burning sensation. You meticulously check your children's fingers and toes, rubbing them gently, desperately trying to restore circulation. Exposed skin, even for a few minutes, can lead to painful, debilitating damage. You wrap cloths around your face when you venture out, protecting your nose and cheeks from the biting wind. The pain of frostnip, the precursor to frostbite, is a sharp, stinging reminder of the cold's insidious power. The very act of survival becomes an exercise in ingenuity. When the village well freezes solid and your melted snow runs low, you might resort to chipping ice directly from exposed surfaces, bringing it back to your hut in precious, heavy chunks. You learn to identify spots where the wind has scoured the snow away, exposing patches of frozen earth where you might find a forgotten root or a bit of deadfall. Every resource is vital, and every method of obtaining it, however unorthodox, is explored. You might even find yourself contemplating whether the practice of using animal hides for improved insulation on walls, a practice debated by some medieval historians as less common than often depicted in popular culture, would actually be worth the effort and resource drain. The fierce winds do more than just make you cold. They strip away heat from everything they touch. Even the ground already frozen becomes even colder, radiating an unyielding chill that permeates through your thin footwear. You learn to move quickly when outside, minimizing exposure, but the short trips become more frequent as your immediate firewood supply dwindles. The battle against the elements is a constant, unending drain on your physical and mental reserves. During one particularly brutal cold snap, you wake to find the inside of your hut colder than usual. A thin layer of frost coats the inside of your walls, and your breath hangs heavy in the air. The fire, though blazing, seems unable to keep pace with the external chill. This realization that even your meager sanctuary is struggling fills you with a profound sense of vulnerability. You try to plug the smallest cracks with more straw, but it feels like a futile gesture against the overwhelming power of the cold. You might even laugh a dry, humorless sound at the sheer absurdity of trying to fight nature with a handful of hay. The constant battle against the elements breeds a deep-seated respect, almost a fear of nature's raw power. You realize that you are not in control, that your survival is entirely dependent on your ability to adapt, to endure, and to hope that the storm will eventually pass. This humility born of direct experience with nature's indifference is a profound lesson. You become attuned to the subtle changes in the wind's song, the shift in the quality of the light, the almost imperceptible signs that signal a brief reprieve or a renewed onslaught. You rely on every bit of knowledge passed down through generations. Your grandmother, a fount of ancient wisdom, might tell you about a specific type of knot to secure your shutters against the wind, or a particular method of stacking firewood to maximize its insulating properties against the side of your hut. These seemingly small details honed over centuries of similar struggles can mean the difference between life and death. You absorb them, filing them away, understanding that this knowledge is as vital as any physical tool. The long, dark hours of these extreme blizzards trapped indoors also amplify the internal pressures within your hut. Tensions can rise quickly as cabin fever sets in. Arguments usually suppressed flare up. The sheer monotony and claustrophobia of confinement test the bonds of even the strongest families. You try to keep the peace to offer distractions to encourage quiet activities, but the strain is evident on everyone's faces. You learn to appreciate the silence when the blizzard finally breaks a deafening quiet that descends upon the snow-covered landscape. It's a silence that is both beautiful and unsettling, filled with the promise of a brief respite before the next assault. You step outside, sinking into the deep snow, and take a deep, shaky breath of the frigid, clean air. The world is transformed a pristine white canvas, stark and breathtaking. It's a moment of profound beauty, a reminder that even in the midst of extreme suffering, nature can offer fleeting moments of awe. The sight of footprints in the fresh snow, your own and those of your neighbors, is a powerful affirmation of life. It's a testament to the fact that you are still here, still moving, still fighting. Each step is a small victory against the vast, overwhelming forces of winter. This constant dance with the elements, the negotiation between survival and the sheer power of nature, defines your existence in this brutal medieval winter. You are but a tiny speck, a flicker of life, yet you persist. As the sun, if you can even call it, that crawls across the low winter sky, casting long, weak shadows, the crushing weight of monotony settles in. Days bleed into weeks, weeks into months, a seamless, unending expanse of cold, hunger, and struggle. The world outside your hut is an unchanging landscape of white and gray, and the world inside is little different, smoky, cramped, and perpetually dim. The initial adrenaline of survival, the frantic rush of preparation, has long since faded, replaced by a dull, persistent ache of sameness. This is the long night, a test not just of your body, but of your very spirit. The lack of meaningful stimulation is profound. There's no news from outside the village, no new faces, no fresh stories. The same tales are told and retold by the meager firelight, their edges worn smooth with repetition. The daily chores, tending the fire, melting snow, rationing food, are performed with a grim, almost robotic efficiency. Your mind, once accustomed to the varied demands of warmer seasons, now feels sluggish, starved for novelty. You find yourself staring blankly into the embers, thoughts drifting, struggling to maintain focus. The darkness, both external and internal, is relentless. The short days offer little light, and the nights stretch on, endlessly, broken only by the flickering glow of your rushlight or the dying embers of your fire. You crave the invigorating light of a summer sun, but the memory feels distant, almost unreal. The lack of natural light takes a toll on your mood, contributing to a pervasive sense of melancholy and despair. You feel the gloom settling over the village, a collective shadow that chills the spirit as much as the body. Time itself becomes fluid and almost meaningless concept. The strict rhythms of seeding and harvest, once the anchors of your year are gone, replaced by the arbitrary passage of days you can no longer accurately count. You might ask a neighbor what day it is only to receive a shrug or a vague approximation. The sense of being adrift, of being disconnected from the normal flow of existence, is disorienting and deeply unsettling. Your internal world becomes both your refuge and your prison. You spend hours lost in thought, revisiting memories of warmer times, of bountiful harvests of laughter and light. These memories are a double-edged sword. They offer a brief escape, a flicker of warmth, but they also highlight the stark contrast with your current reality, deepening your sense of loss. You might find yourself replaying conversations in your head, imagining different outcomes, a silent theater of the mind playing out behind your eyes. The crushing weight of monotony can lead to moments of profound despair. You might question the point of it all, the endless struggle with no end in sight. The temptation to simply give up, to let the cold take you, can be a seductive whisper in the darkest hours. You fight it with every fiber of your being, clinging to tiny threads of hope. The thought of your children, the distant promise of spring, the sheer stubbornness of your own will. You tell yourself, just one more day, just one more breath. This inner battle is as fierce as any physical one. Human interaction, once a source of comfort, can also become strained. The confined spaces, the perpetual hunger, and the constant stress make tempers short. Small annoyances can escalate into bitter arguments. The easy laughter of summer is replaced by strained silence or terse exchanges. You learn to choose your words carefully to avoid unnecessary conflict, knowing that every ounce of emotional energy is precious and cannot be wasted on petty disputes. To combat the mental decline, you engage in small, repetitive tasks that require little thought but offer a sense of purpose. You might mend worn clothing carefully, patch a broken tool, or slowly whittle a piece of scavenged wood. These simple tactile activities provide a focus for your restless mind, a way to anchor yourself in the present moment and ward off the encroaching despair. You find a strange, almost meditative quality in the rhythmic motion of your hands, a small victory against the vast emptiness of the days. The lack of diverse food contributes to the monotony. Every meal is similar: thin gruel, boiled roots, perhaps a tiny scrap of dried meat. Your palate yearns for new flavors, for the freshness of spring greens or the sweetness of summer fruit. The very act of eating becomes less about enjoyment and more about basic sustenance, a grim necessity. You might try to invent new ways to prepare the same few ingredients, trying to coax out different tastes, but the results are rarely satisfying. You witness and sometimes experience yourself the subtle signs of cabin fever: restlessness, irritability, a heightened sensitivity to noise or movement. People pace within their small huts, unable to settle. Children become listless or conversely prone to sudden, inexplicable bursts of energy that quickly fade. The desire to simply escape, to walk out into the vast white landscape, even if it means certain death, can be a fleeting, terrifying thought. Despite the gloom, there are tiny, fragile glimmers of human spirit. A mother humming a lullaby to her child, her voice a soft, melodic counterpoint to the howling wind. A shared story around the fire, told with a quiet intensity that draws everyone in. A shared glance of understanding with a neighbor, a silent acknowledgement of the collective suffering and shared resilience. These are the moments that remind you of your shared humanity, the threads that prevent you from completely unraveling. You might even find yourself attempting a quiet, off-key hum of a forgotten tune, just to add a small note of something other than the wind to the pervasive silence. Your dreams, when they come, are often vivid and disorienting. You dream of vibrant green fields, of warm sun on your skin, of the sweet taste of fresh berries. These dreams are often so real that waking back to the cold, dim reality of your hut is a painful jolt. Sometimes you dream of feasts, of tables laden with food, only to wake with an even deeper gnawing in your empty stomach. The subconscious mind, starved for sensation, creates elaborate fantasies, both beautiful and cruel. The only true light is the fire, and you find yourself gazing into its flickering flames for long periods, mesmerized by its dance. It is a source of warmth, of light, of life itself, a powerful symbol in the darkness. You feed it carefully, tending it with reverence, knowing that its survival is inextricably linked to your own. The crackle of the burning wood, the shifting patterns of the embers, provide a hypnotic focus, a small comfort in the overwhelming monotony. This long night, this period of sustained deprivation and profound isolation, is perhaps the most difficult challenge of the medieval winter. It tests the very core of your being, pushing your mental and emotional limits to their breaking point. But through it all, you persist. You find small ways to cope, small moments of connection, tiny flickers of hope that keep the flame of your spirit from being extinguished. You are still here, enduring, waiting for the long night to finally end. Just when the monotony and despair threaten to swallow you whole, when every day feels like a repetition of the last, a subtle shift begins. It's not a grand, dramatic change, but a slow, almost imperceptible unfolding, like a flower pushing through frozen earth. These are the moments of unexpected discoveries, tiny glimmers of knowledge or forgotten skills that offer a fragile, yet powerful flicker of hope in the overwhelming darkness. You find yourself becoming a keen observer, attuned to the slightest deviation from the bleak norm, searching for any sign that the long night might eventually yield to dawn. One afternoon, while desperately searching for more firewood in a rarely explored section of the snow-laden forest, you stumble upon something truly unexpected: a small, hollowed-out log, partially buried by snow. Inside, carefully wrapped in dried leaves, are several remarkably well-preserved dried mushrooms and a handful of hardened, edible nuts. Someone, perhaps years ago, had created this hidden cache, a forgotten store against a forgotten winter. It's not a feast, but it's a windfall, a sudden, unexpected boost to your meager food supply. The sheer serendipity of the discovery fills you with a surge of almost childish delight, a rare burst of genuine joy in a season of endless sorrow. You realize that even in this unforgiving wilderness, there are secrets waiting to be found if you are only observant enough. This small discovery reignites a spark within you, a renewed sense of purpose beyond mere endurance. You begin to look at your surroundings with fresh eyes, not just as a source of immediate survival, but as a landscape filled with hidden possibilities. You recall fragmented stories your grandfather used to tell about identifying edible mosses, about certain types of tree bark that could be boiled to extract a bitter but nourishing liquid, or about the properties of various forgotten wild herbs. You cautiously begin to experiment, trying to match the lore with the reality of the frozen, dormant plant life around you. This renewed intellectual engagement, however small, helps to combat the mental lethargy that the long winter has induced. You also begin to notice subtle clues left by the animals' indications of their own desperate struggle for survival. You observe how certain birds peck at specific berries that you previously thought inedible, or how a squirrel, seemingly by instinct, digs through layers of snow to unearth a buried cache of acorns. These observations, honed by your own hunger, transform you into a silent student of the wilderness. You learn to interpret the faintest tracks in the snow, the subtle changes in animal behavior, gaining a deeper understanding of the natural world that surrounds you. Inside the hut, driven by the desire to alleviate the oppressive boredom, you might begin to experiment with forgotten crafts. Perhaps you find a small, sharp stone and attempt to carve a crude toy for your child from a piece of scavenged wood, focusing intently on the tactile sensation of the wood under your hands. Or perhaps you revisit the ancient art of knot tying, meticulously practicing intricate patterns, finding a calming rhythm in the repetitive motions. These small acts of creation, however simple, are a powerful antidote to the consuming despair, a way to reclaim a sense of agency in a world where you feel utterly powerless. You might even crack a grim joke. Well, if I don't survive, at least this little wooden rabbit will. The humor is thin, but it's there. The communal aspect of discovery also plays a part. A neighbor might stumble upon a forgotten fishing trap, frozen but intact, offering a slim hope of catching fish in the icebound river. Another might recall a specific location in the forest where ancient oak trees drop particularly large, nourishing acorns. These shared fragments of knowledge, often passed down through generations, but rarely needed in full, suddenly become vital. The act of sharing these discoveries, of collaborating on new ways to find sustenance, strengthens the fragile bonds of the community, turning individual survival into a collective endeavor. Historians generally agree that the sharing of practical knowledge and collective ingenuity were crucial for medieval communities to survive prolonged crises. This reciprocal exchange of information is a powerful engine of resilience. You learn to mend things you once would have discarded. A broken tool, a torn blanket, a cracked pot, each becomes an opportunity for ingenuity. You use animal sinew to stitch together worn leather fashion new handles from tough branches and patch holes with scavenged bits of fabric. This resourcefulness born of necessity fosters a deep appreciation for every object, every material, and transforms you from a mere consumer into a skilled artisan of survival. The satisfaction of successfully repairing something, of extending its life, is a quiet but profound victory. The unexpected finds aren't always tangible. Sometimes it's a realization, a shift in perspective. You might observe how the packed snow outside your hut, once a symbol of imprisonment, also acts as an effective insulator, protecting your dwelling from the fiercest winds. Or you might notice how certain types of berries, when frozen solid, lose their bitterness and become almost sweet, a surprising source of flavor and a tiny bit of energy. These small insights, born from prolonged observation and desperate experimentation, are invaluable. One day, while tending to the small fire, you discover that by carefully placing certain stones around the embers, you can create a more efficient heat sink, radiating warmth more effectively into the hut. It's a simple trick, but one that significantly improves the overall warmth of your dwelling, reducing the amount of precious firewood needed. This small technological advancement, born of practical necessity, feels like a monumental achievement, a testament to the power of observation and adaptation. You feel a surge of quiet pride, a sense of having outsmarted the cold, if only for a moment. This period of unexpected discoveries is a turning point. It's not that the winter becomes less brutal or the hunger less gnawing, but the relentless despair is tempered by moments of ingenuity, by the satisfaction of a problem solved, a hidden resource found. It transforms your passive endurance into an active engagement with your environment, a continuous process of learning and adapting. You realize that survival is not just about holding on, but about constantly seeking new ways to persist, to leverage the environment, and to find hope in the most unlikely of places. It's a testament to the boundless capacity for innovation, even under the direst of circumstances. Then one morning you feel it. A subtle shift in the air, a whisper of something new carried on the wind. It's not warmth, not yet, but a distinct lessening of the biting chill, a promise of something other than the deep freeze. You step outside, bracing yourself for the usual assault, but the air, though still frigid, lacks the razor-sharp edge it has held for what feels like an eternity. Your breath still missed, but perhaps it dissipates a fraction of a second faster. This is it, the first tentative whispers of spring, hard-earned and precious beyond measure. The snow, which once seemed like an immovable, endless blanket, now begins to show subtle signs of weakening. In places where the weak winter sun has managed to penetrate for a few hours, you see patches of dull, grayish slush, no longer the pristine, unyielding white. Water drips from the eaves of your hut, a steady plink, 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 that for months has been replaced by the crackle of ice. This sound, once mundane, is now a symphony of hope, each drop a tiny victory against winter's reign. You might even find yourself standing there listening to it, a small, involuntary smile touching your lips. The sun itself, though still low, seems to possess a newfound strength. Its light, no longer just a pale glow, feels a tiny bit warmer on your face. You find yourself instinctively turning your face towards it, absorbing every precious photon like a starving plant seeking sustenance. The days ever so slowly begin to lengthen. The pre-dawn darkness is a little less absolute, and the evening twilight lingers for a few precious minutes longer. Each added moment of daylight is a gift, a promise of the vibrant, life-giving light that will eventually return. You start to notice changes in the natural world around you, signs that life dormant for so long is stirring beneath the frozen surface. The birds, once silent and fluffed up against the cold, begin to chirp tentatively, their calls thin but distinct in the thawing air. You might spot a robin, its breast a duller red than in summer, but undeniably present. The squirrels, more active now, scamper across the melting snow, their frantic movements a testament to renewed energy. These tiny, familiar creatures, once nearly invisible in the white landscape, are now harbingers of change. You might even laugh to yourself a soft, raspy sound. Well, look who decided to show up for the party. The frozen earth, though still largely impenetrable, softens just enough in isolated sun-drenched spots for you to see the first brave shoots of green. Tiny, fragile sprouts of grass barely visible against the dark soil push their way through the thawing mud. These aren't bountiful crops not yet, but they are irrefutable proof that the life force of the earth is reawakening. You might kneel down carefully, touching these nascent signs of life, a profound sense of awe washing over you. This return of green, even in its most embryonic form, is a visual symphony for eyes starved of color. Scholars have noted how deeply medieval people were attuned to these subtle seasonal shifts, as their very survival depended on recognizing these cues. The village itself seems to stir from its long, frozen slumber. People emerge from their huts with a new sense of purpose, a renewed vigor in their movements. The grim silence of deep winter is slowly replaced by the sound of muffled voices, the distant ring of an axe, the tentative creak of a cart. There's a cautious optimism in the air, a shared sense of having weathered the worst and seeing the faintest light at the end of the tunnel. The shared suffering now gives way to a shared fragile hope. You notice the melting snow begins to reveal what was hidden beneath. Discarded branches, forgotten tools, perhaps even a patch of last year's withered berries, now soggy, but still a potential, if meager, find. The landscape, once a uniform white, starts to reveal its underlying contours, the gentle slopes and hidden hollows reappearing as the snow recedes. The world is slowly, painstakingly becoming familiar again, shedding its oppressive white shroud. The daily chores, while still demanding, feel lighter and infused with a new sense of urgency and hope. The process of melting snow for water becomes less daunting as the ambient temperature rises. Gathering firewood is still necessary, but the thought of it sustaining you until warmer weather is now within reach. Every effort, every small task, feels like a step closer to liberation from winter's icy grip. The livestock, thin and weak from the long confinement, begin to show signs of renewed life. Their bleats are a little stronger, their movements a little less sluggish. The prospect of leading them out to graze on the first tender shoots of grass, though still weeks away, is a powerful motivator. You imagine the taste of fresh milk, the feel of new wool, and these thoughts, once distant dreams, now seem within the realm of possibility. The change in the air, though subtle, also brings a psychological release. The constant crushing pressure of cold and hunger eases, if only fractionally. You find yourself able to breathe a little deeper, your shoulders a little less hunched. The fear that has been a constant companion begins to recede, replaced by a cautious, tentative optimism. The mere thought of spring, the promise of renewal, is enough to lift your spirits in ways you hadn't thought possible just weeks ago. You might even find yourself attempting a weak off-key whistle of a forgotten tune, a testament to the lifting of your spirit. One particularly bright afternoon, you notice something truly profound. The snow, where it still lies in deep drifts, has developed a crystalline shimmer, catching the sun's strengthening rays and reflecting them back in dazzling flashes of light. It's not just melting, it's transforming, losing its hard, opaque density. This visual shift is a powerful symbol of the impending change, a vibrant affirmation that winter's hold is weakening, that its icy heart is finally beginning to yield. The community, emboldened by these signs, begins to make plans for the coming planting season. Hushed conversations about preparing the fields, about repairing tools, about the prospects for the next harvest, replace the grim discussions of survival. There's a renewed sense of shared purpose, a collective looking forward, rather than just a desperate clinging to the present. The long night has been a crucible forging a deeper understanding of interdependence, and now that understanding will be put to work in the task of rebuilding. The final thaw is not a sudden dramatic event, but a gradual, gentle unfolding, like the world slowly stretching after a long, deep sleep. You step outside your hut one morning, and the air, though still crisp, carries the unmistakable scent of damp earth and fresh growth, a perfume you haven't truly breathed for months. The snow, once a formidable enemy, now lies in rapidly shrinking patches, revealing dark, rich soil beneath. The world, for so long a monochrome canvas, is finally bursting forth with color. The dull greens of emerging shoots, the deep brown of mud, the bright, startling blue of the sky. Your body, battered and weakened by the ordeal, responds to the newfound warmth with a slow, cautious reawakening. The persistent aches lessen, the perpetual chill begins to dissipate, replaced by a grateful warmth that sinks deep into your bones. You feel a lightness in your step, an energy that was utterly absent just weeks ago. The hunger is still there, a familiar pang, but it is no longer the all-consuming torment it once was. The promise of fresh food, of actual sustenance, feels tantalizingly close. The sounds of the village are transformed. The mournful howl of the wind is replaced by the cheerful gurgle of melting snow, rushing in rivulets towards the distant river. Birds sing with a newfound vigor, their calls a joyous symphony, celebrating the return of life. The distant bleating of sheep, the lowing of cattle, the chatter of neighbors working in their fields. These are the melodies of a world reborn, a stark contrast to the oppressive silence of winter. You might find yourself just standing there listening, a profound sense of relief washing over you. The land itself seems to breathe a sigh of relief. The frozen ground softens, becoming workable once more. You join your neighbors in the fields, your hands, though still raw, eager to break the soil. The smell of freshly turned earth is intoxicating, a primal scent of promise and renewal. Each clod of dirt broken, each furrow plowed, is an act of defiance against the winter that tried to claim you. It's a testament to your resilience, a physical manifestation of your will to survive. As the days grow longer and warmer, the memory of the winter, while still sharp, begins to recede, taking on the quality of a vivid, terrible dream. You look at your children, their faces still a little pale and gaunt, but with a new sparkle in their eyes, and you feel a surge of fierce, protective love. You survived. They survived. And that in itself is a miracle. You might even recall a moment amidst the depths of winter where you thought you heard the faint laughter of a child in the distance, a sound that now truly rings out vibrant and real. The community, having faced the crucible of winter together, emerges changed. The bonds forged in shared suffering are deeper, more profound. The petty squabbles of before seem trivial now, overshadowed by the collective triumph of survival. There's a newfound respect for each other, a silent understanding of the strength and vulnerability that resides in every human heart. You are no longer just neighbors. You are fellow survivors bound by an experience that has stripped away all pretense. Modern sociological theories sometimes explore how shared trauma can paradoxically strengthen community ties, a phenomenon likely observed even in medieval settings. The village begins to stir with renewed purpose. Homes are thoroughly cleaned, their smoky interiors aired out, the lingering dampness banished by the gentle sun. Tools are sharpened, fields prepared, and the first tentative seeds are sown in the thawing earth. Every act is imbued with a quiet reverence, a profound appreciation for the cyclical nature of life and the bounty of the earth. The lean times have taught you the true value of every grain, every root, every living creature. You step into the sunlight, your eyes squinting against the unexpected brightness, and feel the warmth spread across your face. It's a feeling you once took for granted, now a luxurious sensation, a profound comfort. The heavy winter clothes are shed, replaced by lighter tunics, allowing your skin to breathe, to feel the gentle caress of the spring breeze. This sensory reawakening is a powerful reminder of how much you have endured and how much you have gained. The medieval winter has been a brutal teacher, but it has taught you invaluable lessons. You have learned the true meaning of resilience, the depths of human endurance. You have discovered an inner strength you never knew you possessed. You have learned to appreciate the simplest comforts: warmth, a full stomach, the gentle touch of a loved one. Your perspective on life has irrevocably shifted, valuing existence itself above all else. You are forever marked by the experience, a survivor with a story etched into your very being.